What the show represents to me, and as a jumping off point for conversation, is this larger picture of the world we live in today. But I think before we get to that piece and sort of explore it, we have to talk about the reasons why I got involved and the importance of this work to me. And this ability which to also tackle some of the hard pieces of African American and African experience, and that is certainly slavery, the Middle Passage, and then the struggle after that.
Yes.
This all comes out of a need for me to sort of understand myself, to find out my place in this country, which I do love. So what you see is this chronicling of a series of paintings that speak to the existence, my existence, your existence, visually.
So it makes me think so much about you as a storyteller, and that you take the images that you create to tell various types of stories. And as a scholar of African American literature, I'm looking at those narrative artists who are telling all kinds of stories. And I'm thinking about a Philadelphia writer, Lorraine Carey, and her book, The Price of a Child. And I was actually at a talk recently with Lorraine, and she talked about that fact-finding that you just were mentioning, right? That difference between, I think both Lorraine talks about this and Toni Morrison talks about it, right? That difference between fact and truth. And so Lorraine works on getting the facts.
Yes.
You work on making sure that the historical moment is correct, right? You make sure that the images are historically accurate. But then there's something else that goes on for writers, for visual artists like yourself, that you're also getting us to understand and know the truth.
Yes.
That sort of goes beyond just the facts.
Yes.
So I think about a writer like Toni Morrison, who in the quintessential 20th century novel about American slavery, in my mind, Beloved, that she does that work of telling us all about facts, right? And we understand these really important facts about the plantation system, and we understand very important facts about certain artifacts as well. But then there's something else about getting us to experience the truth of American slavery. And I think that comes out so beautifully in your work. And I'm thinking about all of these artists throughout the 20th century that have been trying to get us to know the truth about that experience, right? Whether it was our forefathers and mothers coming through the Middle Passage, or whether it's their lives on plantations, or whether it's their struggle to wrest freedom for themselves, right?
Yes.
And then the new lives that they experienced as free people, as emerging citizens in America. I think it's really exciting to make those connections between the artists, all of you as artists, whether it's narrative artists or visual artists.
You see it in Charles White. You see my efforts in trying to present the horrors of slavery through a medium that is, in a sense, speaks to life and joy. The hope is that I present these hard things in such a way that allows that viewer to enter into that space, which is actually my space.
Yeah.
So that is the hope and the intent of the work. And even today, because I think so much of this show, the reason for this show and the reasons for a lot of new publications has to do with slavery's place and how it affects us today.
Yes.
And I think that's important. So getting back to speaking about it in terms of how do you talk to children about it, you have to talk about this Africans ripped away from their homeland. and that middle passage with no free will. To landing into this country, trying to find and make a new life under being enslaved, and this sense of, at that time, still adding to this country's history and culture and being. The importance of cotton. We have importance of needing that cotton to be picked by enslaved people, and at the same time propelling this country forward, and at the same time keeping black folks down.
Yes.
But the resilience that's where we must talk and start with children. The resilience of coming out of being captives, being enslaved, being victims, to a sense of contribution. There's a beautiful arc of promise that I think this is also what you can't have that arc of promise if you don't show where you came from.
That's right.
You can't move ahead until you know your history and where it started and how it started.
I think that's so important because I know that part of one of the struggles for parents who are raising African American children is that they are always thinking about that arc, and often the criticism that I hear is that we focus so much on that period of enslavement, right? And that they want to see sort of the end of the rainbow.
Yes.
But I love your phrase, the arc of promise, because if you don't have the beginning of the arc, right, and move through the height of the arc, right, and get us to that place of promise, you can't see the totality of the movement. And what we sort of run the risk of doing is that if we don't talk about all of it, we run the risk of sort of teaching our children, I think, and something that's imbalanced, right, an imbalanced history. And we don't want to do that. We want to teach sort of a balanced, we want to teach an arc of promise. That's a book title.
Right? I'm worried. I'll look at it.
That's a book title.